the impact of social media or how wide an audience it reaches.
Facebook reaches 2.32 billion people worldwide.
Instagram has around 1 billion users.
186 million people have a Snapchat account.
One platform in particular had a large influence on the 2016 election, resulting in a culture shift: Twitter. Despite what you may think, social media is more than just a status update and sharing funny videos. It's a malleable platform utilized by politicians to reach a multitude of users.
In recent years, the original intent of social media has gone out the window, and citizens are using it as an outlet for hate. This shift online led us to question, how is the current political climate parallel to the rise of hate groups through fake news and the overuse of social media?
Here's a visual of political figures who were retweeted at least 5 times by hate groups. This proves that their use of social media reaches a multitude of hateful organizations. Here you can see Trump was the most retweeted out of all politicians.
We have addressed this problem from 3 different angles.
The ethics of truthful reporting,
How fake news furthers politically charged agendas,
And the shift in American culture.
First, we have identified the implications of fake news and multiple media platforms.
With the rise of social media in the US, the value of entertainment outweighs the certitude and actuality of a story. Whether the matter is true or not, people will take it and produce their own conclusions based off of falsified statements. According to Amy Mitchell, readers and listeners find themselves drawn to a headline only to find it as an exaggeration and attention-grabbing story. This piece of misinformation may not only affect the reader, but the audiences of the claim.
A Citizen's Guide to Fake News suggests that over 62% of Americans receive their news from social media. The ability to have unlimited news stories at your fingertips has created a mixed impact. While it has allowed for more news to be more accessible, this also allows radical beliefs to become accessible as well. This trend of fake news has become increasingly and worrisomely prevalent, and has forced a debate of whether or not the press owes the truth. The news cycle is undoubtedly mingled with the political system, and the impact is undeniable. Social media has completely revolutionized the political system.
During the 2016 election, both candidates utilized different campaign strategies. According to an article in the European Journal of Communication by Gunn and Lee, Trump's strategy played to his underdog status. Though he had no political experience at the time, as a business owner and celebrity, he was well versed in exploiting the media.
Exploiting the media isn't a new concept. Fake news has affected people over time but has been observed in a different light and is arguably considered a slippery term. In a recent article, What is the Future for Fake News by Maria Murphy, it clarifies how apparent fake news has been over the years. It's simply been marketed differently with the rise of social media. Popular micro-targeting tactics are showing clear targets with the rise of anti-race and anti-religion hate groups, allowing these politically assertive groups to prey on the weak and discourage anyone who might look or think differently.
Next, we have analyzed how fake news is used by hate groups.
An example of the harm of hate through social media can be embodied by Russia's place in the 2016 presidential election. Vitaly Bespalov, an aspiring journalist, took a job for a trolling Russian company. He had to make despicable political posts towards anyone but Vladimir Putin. According to Time magazine, it was the mindfulness and venom of these posts that led Bespalov to quit no longer after he started. They post in favor of who they want, in this case Vladimir Putin, while criticizing anyone against them.
Right-wing groups are the main perpetrator of the use of fake news. Professor Kate Starbird proves this through a program which catalogs tweets based on hashtags regarding tragic events such as Christ Factor. These tweets reference 117 websites, 80 of which being fake news. Of those with a political agenda, half were right-wing. The alt-right often uses fake news to politically disregard proof. In the current political climate, U.S. President Donald Trump is a prevalent user of this. John Egerton quotes Trump referring to 60 Minutes as fake news when providing a story on the separation of immigrant families. This disqualification of journalism restricts the perspectives the common American can reliably receive. Not only is this a form of controlling propaganda, it creates a sense of mistrust in the government and journalism.
Fake news spreads faster than ever online, and this lack of regulation makes the internet a perfect outlet for hate. Sean Eddington suggests that people become disinhibited online. This online disinhibition effect explains why people engage in hate speech, cyber trolling, and harassing behaviors after reading news made to exacerbate and rile up irritable social media users.
The amount of hate groups and their members have skyrocketed more than 900% in 2014 to 2016, according to the study, Hate Groups Explode on Social Media. This statistic is unbelievable, but it is true, and unless we do something about these groups and their members, will continue to rise.
Third, we have assessed the shift in American culture.
Speed seems to be the main obstacle in the media world. Since viewers want the newest piece of news at the fastest speed, news outlets have to do everything at a faster pace to get out there, adding their own personal point of views. Making sure the information is reliable has now become vital. This reduction of time doesn't bother any of the social media journalists. Many do not realize that fake news can have a bigger outcome than the number of shares. According to Hal Burgel, a professor of computer science at the University of Nevada, these false reports can induce panic, cause accidents, prompt military action, and so on.
A key example of this is the Pittsburgh shooter. Claude Thompson provides evidence that the man accused of killing 11 people in a Pittsburgh synagogue may have communicated his intentions on the social media site Gab. Gab has allowed for alt-right groups to express their radical beliefs and find support for them. This has allowed these beliefs to become mainstream. Hate can reach its contaminating grasp further than ever. There's a thin line between freedom of speech and blatant discrimination, as well as a thin line between freedom of press and pure fake news.
America is a melting pot of diversity, and while some see that as a part of the rich culture that resides in this country, others see inclusion in a negative light. How President Donald Trump spoke about the 2017 Unite the Right rally run by white nationalists showed which side of the racial spectrum he was on. Samuel Perry's President Trump in Charlotte's Uncivil Mourning and White Supremacy suggests Trump failed to address threats to American notions of inclusion, civil rights, and equality, while being sympathetic towards the organizers of the Unite the Right rally. This permissiveness of racial insensitivity not only puts the work of countless activists to shame, it shines a light on what a future under the Trump-Pence administration could look like for minorities.
According to the 2017 article, Here's What White Supremacy Looks and Sounds Like Now, Kelsey Murphy and Daniel Kress argue that alt-right groups are not racist, but instead using their freedom of speech to express their views. Even though the group's terminology may differ, along with their ideas, their vision of racial purity and white power is the same, turning the idea of diversity into a competition of the races. Discussing the future is important, and we've come up with these solutions so that this could be our new America.
An increase in government diversity could have a substantial impact on the minority view of the current administration. Having multiple ethnicities, gender identities, and cultures represented in the lawmaking body of the United States will make all citizens comfortable with their representation. However, we decided this was not the most potent solution to the rising tensions in America.
We also have discussed how we can stop the intentional production of fake news by emphasizing fact-checking. Creating news in an attempt to provoke certain types of people can lead to devastating ends. In a New York Times article by Eric Lichtblau, he suggests that political vitriol incites violent attacks. Knowing words have the power to escalate a situation, it is paramount that people taking the time to check the information to decrease the number of violent attacks committed in vain. While it can be tedious to fact-check, it can mean the difference between life and death. Despite the importance of this idea, we as a group chose to look at this problem from a broader view.
Another solution that could resolve the rising tensions in America is training law enforcement to better identify and handle hate crimes. According to the New York Times, after the killing of 3 Muslim students in North Carolina by a radical Trump supporter, investigators found it difficult to establish if the killing was religiously, racially, or ethnically motivated. The lack of knowledge among the police department led to this crime being ruled a parking dispute. Training can be costly to any organization, but it is important that people in a position to protect all citizens are well versed on how to handle the growing number of hate crimes. In spite of its importance, this solution brings only temporary relief to a bigger issue.
After analyzing all of our solutions, we've come up with the best solution of limiting government officials online and punishing those who take hateful actions online.
Government officials need to be held to a level of esteem that is not only respectful to the position that they hold, but also tolerant of all citizens of America. We came up with the idea of limiting politicians on social media to remain neutral during these agitated times. By
limiting the ability to use social media as a platform to spread hate, the effect online hate has on discrimination will be diminished. The solution does force a large limitation as to restriction of freedom of speech, but it should not be an inhibitor to the progression to the fight against discrimination. Freedom of speech does not inherently imply freedom from repercussions.
Another thing that ties the solution together is punishing hate groups and hateful people on and offline. Whether it's terminating an account or going as far as arresting somebody, when perpetrators are caught and punishments are dealt, the urge to commit these type of acts decrease. Lichtblau suggests the lack of action leaves victims without closure and support after the incident. So not only will this solution impact both parties in a racial altercation, it has long-term implications on how people will treat each other in America. This is America.
President Barack Obama once said, "We did not come here to fear the future, we came here to shape it. So let's create an America we believe in."
Okay. Way to go, guys. Stay up there. Oh. All right, let's see. Asase, how did the group decide to include Maya's perspective, lens, or conclusions into the overall presentation?
We decided to include hers by kind of merging it with Gillian's political aspect because security and politics go hand in hand. So when we removed one of her claims, we decided to still utilize the information she used.
Piath, What is an example of a compelling argument from one of your peers' individual reports that you decided to exclude from your team presentation, and why?
Again, we decided to exclude Maya's because security didn't really tie in with all of ours, and it had great points, but it wasn't like a really way that we can add in our social views or our futuristic views also went into that.
Okay, Gillian, what is the strongest counter argument to the solution or conclusion that you identified, and why?
Our strongest counterargument is that it is limiting free speech, as technically by Constitution, hate speech is protected, but the point of our presentation was to argue the fact that they should not be protected and harsher punishment needs to be allowed.
Maya, describe an argument from one of your peers' individual reports that made you think differently about your team's solution or conclusion.
I thought that Asase's point, her research was a lot on how hate speech is being brought off to younger kids with games, video games and stuff like that, and I really thought that impacted our best solution by limiting what people can and cannot say with on social media and online.
Good.